everyone, and welcome back to another health seminar day here at Gladstone Camp Meeting. I hope you have been enjoying our meetings and having Dr. Vasquez with us. If you've been with us, you've known that the first day Dr. Vasquez talked to us about obesity and stress. Yesterday, hormones and hormonal imbalance and how to fix that. And today, she will be sharing with us about gut health. Thank you for joining us, and we want to remind you to please share with us your questions and comments in whatever platform you're watching. Dr. Vasquez is originally from Venezuela, but she's here in Hillsboro with her private practice, Hope Clinic, Natural Hope, and I hope that you enjoy today's message on gut health.
Hi, thank you for being here in our third day of this journey, where we are talking about what science has discovered in the last days on the most common causes of disease. We talked on the first day about stress, how there are many sources of stress and how it affects our hormones. We talk about that one of the sources of stress is the hidden infections found in our intestines. And today we are going to delve into that. Today, we're going to see the relationship that have the immune system, inflammation, and the microbiota in our body. And we are going to define each of these. So let's start by defining what the immune system is. When it comes to health and immunity, we can think of our bodies as independent nations and the immune system as the nation's military force, the first line of defense. The body is constantly fighting to maintain peaceful homeostasis, balance against numerous potential invaders on multiple fronts. With every element touched, breathe taken, or bite eaten, the body is potentially exposed to enemy troops in the form of bacteria, virus, parasites. The organs, cells, and pathway of the immune system comprise an intricate military-like network that guard the host from invasion and wage war on infections. Like all war, it causes havoc. It causes consequences that in medicine we call inflammation. We call this sudden inflammation acute inflammation because it occurs quickly in a matter of hours. You can feel well right now, and hours later, you can run in fever and infection. Some examples of acute inflammation are the common cold, the flu, bronchitis, and COVID-19. It is often easy to see or feel the inflammation. A person may experience pain, immobility, or swelling, fever, and these last few days. Instead, chronic inflammation occurs in a matter of several months to years and can continue for months or years and is related to hypertension, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, autoimmune diseases, obesity, and metabolic syndrome, and etc. So we can say that all disease is caused by an inflammation that could be either acute or chronic, fast or slow to develop. So you can see two houses here. One house has a bonfire in the living room, in the middle of the living room, and the other does not have any bonfire. I am going to ask the question, if there is a strong wind, which house would you think is going to catch the fire first? It seems really obvious that the house that is most likely to catch the fire is going to be the one that already has fire, right? I hope you agree with me. Well, with this logic, we can say that the fire represented by the bonfire in the middle of the room of the house is chronic inflammation. And when a wind comes that blows through the window of that house, then the house burns all, and we can say that this is an acute inflammation. It was really fast. In medicine, we always say that something became acute because it is urgent, it got worse fast, like a fire. And we say that a disease is chronic when it takes a long time to occur. It is slower. Now, I ask again, which house do you think is going to burn first? Of course, the one with the bonfire. When the wind blows with a virus, the house that is going to catch fire first with acute inflammation in the form of the common cold, COVID, flu, etc., call it what you want, will be the one that has already inflamed with the chronic inflammation with the bonfire. Now you already know why there are people who die of COVID or get so many complications from it. Because these people already have a chronic disease like diabetes, hypertension, obesity, cardiovascular disease, and so much more. What they all have in common is chronic inflammation. That's why you hear on the news all the time that having chronic diseases increases the chances of coronavirus infection and has an increasingly rapid and severe progression, often leading to death. Can we deduce then that these people who have chronic inflammation then have a compromised immune system? Following our example of the military force, we can say the military base comes under attack by the chronic inflammation all the time. The next question that we should ask is, where is located the military base so we can take care of it, right? The main military base of the immune system is our intestine. We have discovered that 75 to 80% of our immune system is found in our gut. And the second most important question is, who do train the military base of our immune system? Who is in charge? They are trained for good bacteria and viruses, which are called intestinal flora, or also called gut microbiota. That is the other name, microbiota. The 75% of the immune system that lives in the gut, it is separated from our microbiota by a single layer of cells that is a fraction of the diameter of a hair and undetectable by the human eye. That single layer of cells acts like a 3-foot rickety wooden fence between the two house parties, with the immune system at one house parties and the microbiota at the other. The parties may be separate, but they are not really separated. They are deeply intertwined, feeding off each other, sharing drinks and laugh, in constant communication with one another. Evidence has shown us that the microbiota helps foster proper development of the immune system, identify invaders, get immune cells to the needed location, and then enhance their infection fighting power. A healthy gut microbiota translates into an empowered a strong immune system that optimally functions to identify a threat when it exists, infections, or even malignant, and eradicate it. You cannot separate the gut microbiota from the immune system. If you hurt one, you will hurt the other. Depending on how you look at it, some would say that you are only 10% human and 90% bacteria. For every human cells, we have 10 bacteria. You are not just human, you are a superorganism that serves as an ecosystem for our flora. Your gut microbiome is just as much as an ecosystem like you see in this forest, formed by trillions of bacteria, yeast, parasites, and viruses, and it thrives on balance and harmony. In the jungle, all animals, plants, and microbes exist with a purpose. Even the mosquitoes and snakes and spiders, they all bring something to that harmonious balance. And as much as I hate the mosquitoes and the spiders, their loss would have unintended consequences and diminish the health of that ecosystem. This is why biodiversity is critically important to any ecosystem, even ours. So, what do these ecosystems do for our body? As a resident of the intestine, it comes as no surprise that they are critically involved in digestive function. They work in teams to unpack your food, allowing you to extract the nutrients you need. Also helps in the production of essential vitamins like B3, B12, B6, and K, and so much more. They have so many digestive enzymes compared to us. So other thing is that it helps activate medication. We even need our gut flora to activate medication, which helps to explain why the same drugs can have a life-saving effect in one person and a life-threatening effect on another. So if we want to take the road of medication in our life, we better take care of our microbiota. And I can see this all the time with my patients. The one who eat a healthy diet and have a healthy lifestyle, the medication can do its job. But the ones that decide only to take the medication and not to eat a healthy diet and have a healthy lifestyle, they will always have problems adjusting and adding more medication. So these bacteria, this microbiota operates as the command center for all the 5 axes of human health, like metabolism. Our gut microbiota has extreme control over the way we process our food and our metabolism. So much control, in fact, that the same food can give totally different effects depending on the gut microbiota. You can give the exact food to 2 different people, and the differences in their microbiota will determine what they ultimately get out of that food. Also, it has a control in the insulin response. It regulates your response to insulin. Foods have a very different blood sugar response in each person. The gut microbiota is responsible for this unique response. In a study, adult men with metabolic syndrome and insulin resistance receive a fecal transplant. Yeah, you are hearing well. A fecal transplant from a lean donor. This led to a change in their gut microbiota associated with improvements in insulin sensitivity and lowering of their blood sugar. But unfortunately, the effect only lasted a few weeks because they didn't change their diet. So the new microbiome couldn't be sustained. We can see also that the microbiota control hormone balance. We learned from yesterday the importance of hormones in our body and the importance that they can be in balance. Well, the gut is literally the largest endocrine organ in the body, deeply involved in securing hormonal balance. Mainly estrogen is the more problematic, and this one is detoxified in the liver for later be eliminated through your gut. And it requires you to have a healthy intestinal bacteria. When healthy bacteria are present in your gut, they assist with the safe removal of these estrogens via your stool. But when unhealthy bacteria are present, they impair estrogen metabolism by making an enzyme called beta-glucuronidase, which reactivates estrogen and then get it reabsorbed into your body again. And that's no good. Excess estrogen has been associated with endometriosis, endometrial hyperplasia, breast and endometrial cancer. Also, the inflammation in the gut causes loss of testosterone and sperm production, no good for men. So, we can continue talking about immunity a lot, but evidence suggests that our gut microbiota not only changes with allergic and autoimmune disease, but it may predict or even cause these immune system conditions. For example, researchers analyzed the dirty diapers of 300 toddlers at 3 months of age. They discovered that specific changes in the gut bacteria this early in life already predicted with which children would subsequently develop asthma years later. But to prove that the gut microbes were actually causing the asthma, they transferred the stool, the diapers, from the diapers into a special germ-free mice. So then after this, what happened? Well, the mice all developed inflamed lungs, indicative of asthma. Also, the gut microbiota helps with our cognition. 90% of serotonin and 50% of dopamine are actually produced in the gut. Precursors of serotonin and dopamine are able to cross the blood barrier and alter our mood or behavior. Taken in sum, intestinal serotonin is able to influence gut motility, mood, appetite, sleep, and brain function. And we have the last one, the gene expression. They can control our gene expression, but we will delve into this later. In summary, microbial metabolism leads to biochemical transformation of our food. In many cases, the healthy bacteria will reward us by molding our food into something that reduces inflammation and promotes health and balance. Knowing all this information that the 80% of our immune system is in the gut and trained by the intestinal flora, the next question should be, where does chronic inflammation come from? Also from the gut. Our military base is constantly under attack through an unhealthy gut. And for a long time, people have thought that the gut was a system for simply absorbing nutrients and eliminating waste. It was simply thought as a food processor that had little to do with heart disease, mental health, autoimmune disease, arthritis, fatigue, dementia, aging, fertility, skin problems, cancer, or obesity. However, all that has changed. The new science has finally achieved what the legendary Greek physician and father of medicine, who based his practice on the observation and study of the human body, Hippocrates, wrote 2,500 years ago. He said, all disease begins in the intestine. And in fact, the latest research not only confirms that the gut is important for immune, mental, and hormonal health. It is absolutely vital. So what happened in the intestine? We use the term dysbiosis to refer to the loss of harmony and balance within our gut. Damage of microbial disruption causes you to lose diversity, and in the process, we see a higher proportion of inflammatory microbes emerge. In other words, the good stuff falls to the wayside, making more room for the not so good stuff to flood your gut. This is problematic because now the gut wall is no longer protected by a healthy community of anti-inflammatory bags, and the result is damage to the tight junctions holding the gut wall together and an increased intestinal permeability. Some call this leaky gut, and it looks like a strainer. That leads to the spillage of this inflammation into the bloodstream. And depending on your genetics and predisposition to certain diseases, then this inflammation will trigger these genes to produce these diseases. Nowadays, there are hundreds of studies that support this information, and you can search it in PubMed.gov with the words leaky gut and gut dysbiosis. We can have yeast overgrowth. We can have a bacterial overgrowth, also called a small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, or we can have also parasite overgrowth. But most of the time, we have all of them. These are opportunistic infections, meaning that we already have them, but in small quantities, and they are harmless. But when our gut flora is not strong, these little guys take advantage and they control our commander, our gut, leading to chronic inflammation. So, what are the symptoms of chronic inflammation? Symptoms are the signals that your body is saying to you that there is inflammation, there is fire in your body that only you can perceive. And we have a list here. We have heartburn, acid reflux, fatigue, bloating, constipation or diarrhea, food intolerance, skin problems, eczema, acne, psoriasis, rashes, urticaria, all kind of skin problems, muscle and joint pain, anxiety, depression, cravings, dizziness and nausea, multiple colds, and brain fog. So then, what are the signs of chronic inflammation? The signs means that a health professional can see and can evaluate, can measure, like the high blood pressure or hypertension, high blood sugar or diabetes, hormonal blood problems through a blood test, fatty liver disease, and stones in the gallbladder with an ultrasound, abdominal ultrasound, and you get the point. But we have autoimmune diseases, cardiovascular diseases, obesity, cancer, chronic infections, multiple sclerosis, asthma, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease. All of these tell us that we have a chronic inflammation in our body. So we have this chronic inflammation in our intestine represented by this bonfire. And now the question is, what we will add fuel to the fire? And we can see stress. We can apply here all that we have learned from the presentation of the day 1 and day 2. Did you remember when I said that high cortisol produced by high stress can fill with gaps our intestine like a strainer? We call this leaky gut. So the same things that cause stress in our body and produce hormone imbalance are the same things that are going to cause gut problems, because everything is interconnected. We talk about chemical toxins like herbicides, pesticides. We talk about the BPA, the plastic byproducts. We talk about refined food with chemical preservatives, additives, colorants, high in sugar, salt, artificial sweeteners. All of them are going to kill our good bacteria and feed our bad bacteria. So unhealthy food feeds unhealthy microbes, and they punish us by creating compounds that inflame our body. No good. So not sleeping are going to cause our hormonal imbalance too. Antibiotics, just 5 days of ciprofloxacin wipes out about a third of gut bacteria, and your gut microbiota are never quite the same. Most species recover within 4 weeks, but some are still absent after 6 months. In the case of clarithromycin and metronidazole, the effects are still evident 4 years after the treatment. And just 4 days of 3 broad-spectrum antibiotics can permanently destroy 9 beneficial species of bacteria, good bacteria that we need to create anti-inflammatory healing chemicals. There are 269 million antibiotic prescriptions in the United States each year. And a recent study suggested that 23% of antibiotics prescriptions are flat out inappropriate, while another 36% were questionable. We also have antacid that takes away the acid of our stomach in order to be able to process protein and kill bad bacteria. And we have the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs that damage our mucosal lining of the gut. And we have also the lack of exercise. All of these stressors can add layers, creating the perfect cocktail to create a dysbiosis, an imbalance of our healthy flora or microbiota, leading to chronic inflammation. So, what can we do? Is the next question. The single greatest predictor of a healthy gut microbiome is the diversity of plants in our diets. It is found that the consumption of 30 different plants in a given week was the greatest predictor of gut microbial diversity. Each dietary choice you make will empower a specific group of microbes, while others will languish. If you permanently remove a food group, the microbes that thrive on that food will starve into extinction. Every single plant, every single type of fiber that we found in vegetables, in fruits, in legumes, in grains, requires a unique team of microbes working in concert to get the job done. It is demanding work, but what follows is magic. The breakdown of fiber by the gut bacteria unleashes what I believe is the most healing nutrient in all of nature, the short chain fatty acids. So there are more of good stuff, but this is the most studied one. We have learned about our good bacteria, but how these powerful microbes actually do their incredible work. Good bacteria have the ability to transform certain types of fiber into electric organic power mana. They are called short-chain fatty acids. Each type of fiber we consume produces a different mix of these when processed by good bacteria, of course. So, when we consume a diverse mix of fiber, meaning a diverse mix of plants, we get all of the benefits that they can give us. Our good bacteria is like the bees. They eat the nectar from the flowers and then they can produce honey that has anti-inflammatory and healing properties, right? Our good bacteria do the same. It's different types of fiber, then they produce several anti-inflammatory substances with healing properties. This is one that has been studied the most, the short chain fatty acid, but there is much more to know and to learn. So the other thing that we could do is eliminate animal protein as much as you can. When we ingest L-carnitine abundant in red meat or certain choline found in red meat, liver, egg yolk, and dairy products, the gut bacteria produce trimethylamine N oxide, or TMAO, more easy. Increased TMAO means increased risk for heart disease, stroke, Alzheimer's disease, type 2 diabetes, chronic kidney disease, peripheral artery disease, congestive heart failure, and atrial fibrillation, just to name a few. Unhealthy food feeds unhealthy microbes that produce unhealthy compounds. And it's a vicious cycle that only is broken by replacing unhealthy food with healthy food. The good news is that a plant-based diet promotes a gut microbiota that just doesn't know how to make TMAO. Studies show that about 4 weeks after giving up red meat, people's TMAO levels drop dramatically. Other thing that we can do is add fermented vegetables, avoid GMO, fried food, gluten, dairy products, add fermented vegetables because they are natural probiotics. And we can also supplement with probiotics when it's necessary. So the next question would be, what happens when the food is not enough? This is very frequent, and there comes a time when we need professional help to help us identify the cause of our ailments and thus attack the root of the problem. Our body is very noble. We only have to give it what it needs and it will respond. From now on, we are going to analyze together some cases with the knowledge that we already learned from day 1 and day 2 and today. Are you ready? Okay, let's start with the first case. This is a 38-year-old female. Her chief complaint is fibromyalgia. Symptoms are muscle pain, low back pain, cervicalgia that disable her. She has to be in bed sometimes up to 2 weeks. Very frequent urination, insomnia, low blood pressure, low pulse, frequent colds, a lot of stress. She had finished 2 doctorates, married, and 2 children, low energy, fatigue, weight gain. But all her labs were normal. So she has a past medical history of miscarriage and irritable bowel. No surgical history and does not take any medication. So we ran the cortisol levels. And do you remember this test from day 1, right? The cortisol. And we can see how this patient has an adrenal dysfunction. That means a stress dysfunction because the adrenals are in charge of management stress in our body. So this patient lacks the proper fluctuation of cortisol. Remember that the black lines on the graph represent the high and low range of cortisol. And we can see that this patient represented by the blue line is below normal. In the morning when she has to increase in cortisol, we can see that it is not enough to give her energy to start the day. Then at night, when it should be low so the patient can have a deep sleep, we can see in this patient that there is a slight increase in cortisol. So we can understand why she has problems sleeping and detoxifying during the night. Then we run an organic acid test that offers a comprehensive metabolic snapshot of a patient's overall health with over 70 markers. It provides an accurate evaluation of intestinal yeast and bacteria. And we can see some positive markers in red color. That means she has yeast overgrowth in her intestine. We also run a mycotox panel that detects the presence of harmful mycotoxin metabolites caused by mold or fungi in the body. And this patient, as we can see, has a positive marker. The one in black, the bar in black, the ochratoxin A. We are exposed to mold wherever we go, especially here in Oregon, in cabins, hotels, in our homes, especially in the bathroom and water damaged building. The bad thing is that most of the time we don't remember being exposed to mold. Most of my patients deny that they have been exposed to mold. It is worth emphasizing that not everyone who is exposed to the mold is going to get sick. There are some people who, due to genetic predisposition, do not detoxify mold, while others do so without any problem. The most serious problem caused by mold are caused by small molecules called mycotoxins, which are produced by mold when they feel threatened. Think of this like the ink an octopus produces or when a scum sprays someone. For some mycotoxins, low levels are not problematic for most individuals. There are multiple different health effects that are caused by mycotoxins, and these symptoms are influenced by genetics, sex, age of the patient, the number of mycotoxins patients absorb, and the type of mycotoxin also play a role in symptoms. However, common symptoms are chronic fatigue that this patient has, pain, ADHD, rashes, COPD, and depression. Less common symptoms include dementia, Parkinson's, and cancer. Mycotoxins also weaken the immune system, which leads to other secondary infections to occur, like in this patient, the yeast overgrowth in her gut. So, this is a real example of how a hidden infections can add layers for chronic stress, leading to chronic inflammation. We can see also how the chronic stress affected her hormones with a past medical history of miscarriage. And we did also some labs that she had low progesterone. So what we did for this patient? First, support the adrenals with herbs, vitamins, minerals, lifestyle. Treat the gut, get rid of the yeast overgrowth with herbal antimicrobials, probiotics, and a protocol. And then support the detoxification pathway for the mold. After some months, the episodes of cervicalgia, back pain were ceasing. She started to have more energy, less pain in general in her whole body. This patient was living a miserable life with all of these symptoms, and although her laboratories were excellent because she was eating well, we cannot tell to this patient to go home, take some painkiller medicine, and try to live a life because her lab tests are normal and she should be fine. She should feel fine. Then, if the painkillers do not work, that is the case most of the time, we will send the patient to her home with some antidepressants medication. And this is how Western medicine treats fibromyalgia. And this patient was me. And today I am able to thank God because I am free of pain. But this painful part of my life led me to look for answers. And today I praise God because I am free in pain and I can wake up every day and stand up of my bed, and that is a gift that not everybody has. And today I praise God for that. And I'm sorry. I get emotional. So, in this case, you can see how every organ is interconnected. We need all of our organs in order to function. Doesn't work separately. how culture has taught us. So let's take a look to case number 2. We have a 60-year-old female with breast cancer in remission. She has been battling with cancer for many years and receiving chemotherapy. At the time of the consultation, her cancer was in remission and she was still receiving chemotherapy. What she wanted most from me was to help her find the cause of her chronic inflammation that causes her to develop cancer. This patient is vegan. She sleeps her 8 hours. She's constant with exercise, but she was feeling so frustrated because nothing works. When I asked about gut symptoms, she denied all of them. She told me that she never had problems with her gut. But as you could learn from today, cancer is a sign of chronic inflammation. So the place to look was the gut. We ran the organic acid test, and these were the results. As you can see, this patient has several markers of yeast overgrowth, which are from number 1 to 9. And she also has markers of bacterial overgrowth, which are from number 10 to 18. So, lesson learned from this case is that not all hidden infections from the gut causes symptoms. Okay? Also, one of the markers that I like the most in this study is oxalates. You can see in the bottom. Oxalates are a common food chemical. They are indigestible to humans and for the most part should stay in the GI tract and pass through unabsorbed. But yeast overgrowth is another cause of oxalates. A healthy gut will resist absorbing them and will contain bacteria that break them down to further protect our body. No benefit has been found to oxalates in the body. In fact, they disrupt normal body functions on the cellular level. Once absorbed, the body needs to protect itself from them, either by putting them somewhere in storage or by excreting them. There is a limit to how much the body can excrete at once. So if too much oxalate is absorbed, at least some will be stored. If your disintoxication system are not working well, you might not excrete any. The problem is that when it gets accumulates, causes inflammation and calcification, and because of this, it is related to cancer development. So one of the challenges is that precisely all vegetables and fruits known to be anti-inflammatory and therefore anti-cancer are high in oxalates. So this patient, following the general advice to eat anti-cancer foods, was actually adding fuel to the fire. But what is the real problem? The foods she was eating or the bacterial and fungal overgrowth that was in her gut? Certainly, it was the yeast overgrowth, the dysbiosis or loss of good intestinal flora, which degrades the oxalates, leading to problems with dietary oxalates and high oxalates building up in her body. Yeast and fungal mucosal overgrowth are the most common root cause of oxalates and also antibiotics. So we have lesson number 2. You cannot take advantage of the healing properties of healthy food unless you have a good intestinal flora. I'm going to repeat. You cannot take advantage of the healing properties of healthy food unless you have a good intestinal flora. So in this patient, we are doing a gut protocol with a diet moderate in oxalates instead of high that she was eating. After 2 months of treatment, this is what she told me. I did not know that I felt so bad until now that I am feeling so good. For me, it was so normal to feel bad that for the first time in my life, I can experience this well-being. And she told me this even in the middle of chemotherapy. Now let's take a look at case number 3. We have a 57-year-old female diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis in 2012. She had a right hip and right shoulder cartilage replacement on June 2019 and 2020. And she was waiting to have her left shoulder replacement when she consulted me for the first time. She had her left shoulder in pain and immobilized for 2 years, always during the consultation. She was like this. So we did the organic acid test, and as you can see, several markers beyond the middle of the orange stripe. The prognosis of treatment is that for each positive marker, there are 2 months of treatment. So in these patients, she will have several months of treatment. In this case, we are talking about an advanced dysbiosis, which will require a long treatment. We can see also in this patient that she also has high oxalates, and we were able to learn from the previous case how these accumulate and cause problems. In the case of this patient, according to her genes, we can see that oxalates are promoting inflammation in her joints. This patient also has a healthy lifestyle. She was vegan, eating healthy food, healthy habits. She was doing hydrotherapy all the time, poultice, and so much more. And she felt so frustrated because she was getting worse and worse every day. After 6 months of treatment that includes a gut protocol with a moderate oxalate diet, a hormone balance protocol, since we learned how high estrogens can add fuel to the fire and supporting the adrenals, she was able to use her arm again for the first time after 2 years of her shoulder being destroyed by the arthritis. So in that consultation, while we were talking, she was moving her arm around everywhere and she was free of pain. God is good to me that I can witness in the front row these kind of miracles. But what I have learned is that healing is a process and it's not an event. Every day we can choose to be in the process or not with our daily habits. And even though she's feeling better and she can move her arm, she needs to keep being in the process every day. She needs to choose still to be in the process. We previously noted that there are more bacteria than cells in our body. But let's take a let's take a step further and talk about genetics. Follow me on this. More than 99% of your DNA comes from microbes, and this is called microbiome. Yes, your genes are less than 1% human. Further, our human genomes are virtually identical, up to 99.9% the same. But our microbiomes may be as much as 90% different from one person to the next. Our gut microbes also exert tremendous power over the expression of your genes through something called epigenetics. Imagine, and I'm going to explain you like this. Imagine that your gut microbiome as controlling a light switch, and the wiring behind the wall is your genetic code. The gut microbiota is not changing the wiring behind the wall, but it can turn the lights on and off, on and off. You cannot change your genetic code, but you can affect which genes get turned on or off. We thought that cracking the human genome would produce major breakthroughs in medicine, because we thought that human health was primarily determined by genetic makeup. No, we are a superorganism with a genetic makeup dominated by the invisible microbes within us. And this is actually a good thing. Rather than worrying about the 0.5% of your DNA that you simply cannot control, let's optimize our microbiome through diet and lifestyle and enjoy the positive effects it has on 99.5% of our DNA plus our epigenetic expression. What once was dismissed as a poop is now the star quarterback for human health. Yes, it can be intimidating that most modern diseases have been connected to damage to the gut microbiome. But remember, we are not helpless victims stricken with disease. We have the powers of science on our side. And for the first time in human history, we actually know enough about the gut microbiota to understand and start to use it to our advantage. When you rebalance your gut microbes, you will see your digestion, immune system, metabolism, hormones, cognition, and gene expression become optimally aligned, and you will transform into the microbe-empowered superhuman that you are.
Vasquez, thank you for being with us again and for, again, bringing so much knowledge to our homes. You mentioned 3 testimonies, including yourself. Thank you for telling us your story. I think that brings it home and makes it more real and tangible for us who are listening. Makes it more believable, I think.
Yeah, of course.
So you mentioned that the intestines are kind of like the commander. So if everything is from the intestines, does that mean that any disease can be treatable from the gut?
Of course, you got it.
Yes, the intestine is the commander. So every disease, we have to look there for the root. We need to look what is the cause that makes dysbiosis.
Mm-hmm.
We have so many causes. For example, I have so many patients that have used antibiotics several times. So if this person doesn't stop to taking antibiotics for everything, even unjustified things, the dysbiosis is gonna get worse. And I have those patients that this is the severe dysbiosis.
Okay.
So if that is the case of this person, we need to work on that to manage the infections, maybe a sore throat they have, and then they take antibiotics, or they are too allergic, have so many allergies, asthma, all of that. Other persons are because they eat a bad food, to fast food. Other person doesn't sleep well, but there is a reason why. It's so easy to say eat well,
Right.
go to, have a good sleep, but then to do it is difficult. So that is when a professional has to find out what happened. Do you have any nutrition deficiencies that doesn't allow you to do this thing that are natural for our body? And then that is the thing, to find what is the cause. And sometimes a surgery can do that. For example, post-cesarean women suffer a lot from dysbiosis because of the cesarean section. That is a kind of a mild obstruction, a pseudo obstruction that may in the intestine, and these lead to accumulation of these bacteria. There is a lot of things. Even if the person was exposed to metal, heavy metals, and all of that. So we need to find what is your cause, and then work on that to eliminate the source, and then work in the gut. Then, depending on the diseases that this person have, it will be the severity also. Yeah.
Thank you. We have someone in our audience, and by the way, I would like to invite all of our audience to participate in the chat and send us your questions in whichever platform you're watching. Someone in the chat asks us, what does antibiotic do to gut health?
Yeah, that is a good question. So we talk about that the intestinal flora is the good bacteria, okay? And we have good bacteria that it should be really high, and the bad bacteria should be really low. As long as we have a good bacteria high, these will maintain low the bad bacteria, because everybody has bad bacteria, but they are uncontrolled. So when we take antibiotic, that the same way that it kills the bad bacteria, right? That's the reason why you are taking antibiotics, because you have an infection, a bacteria. The same way as it's killed this bacteria is gonna kill your bacteria.
Okay.
In your testing.
Oh, wow.
It's the same way. And this is not only with antibiotics, it's also, for example, pesticides, herbicides that are in the food. They are supposed to kill little creatures, right? in the field.
Right.
The same way that they kill this, they are gonna kill our bacteria. That is why we emphasize always organic food. That we used to eat organic food. In our time when I was a child, that word didn't exist, because everybody eats from. I remember eating mangoes from my home and that, you know. But nowadays, because industrialization, now we have with these toxins that kills our bacteria, the same way that they kill the bacteria that we don't want outside. They kill our bacteria. That's why we are in this situation of chronic diseases every day, increasing and increasing, because we are killing our good bacteria. And these are the ones that are going to produce the healing process in our body. So they should be our friends, not our enemy. We need them, and they need us. If we don't feed them, they are gonna die. If we don't feed them with good food, with fiber, all of that, they die. If we just feed with fast food, we are feeding the bad bacteria. And you it's like human beings, right? If you are never going to produce something good from something bad, that is the same thing. Okay. When there is bad bacteria, you can produce something good.
Correct. You mentioned probiotics to take them when necessary. Our audience is wondering, are they good? How do we know which ones are good? Are probiotics or prebiotics necessary? Both? Are the ones we get over the counter good? We have several questions regarding this topic.
Yeah. That is a complicated question because when we already have the chronic disease, we have a chronic disease diagnosed, we need to find a professional, because sometimes the over-the-counter is not gonna be enough, and sometimes could be contraindicated. For example, fermented food is good, but if you are too allergic, and that means that you produce too much histamine because you have a severe dysbiosis, so you produce too much histamine, and this fermented food produce histamine, right? So maybe a person who is so allergic, then they are gonna eat fermented food and they are gonna feel worse. Why? Because of the dysbiosis. It's not because of the fermented food. Okay. It's because of the dysbiosis that we need to restore the gut. We need to restore first, repair the gut, so this person can eat the fermented food and promote the good bacteria. And that is the same with probiotics. There is a lot of types of probiotics. But in some cases, when we have already the chronic disease in our body, we need to kill the bad bacteria. And that is the treatment that I was doing with these three cases. First, we need to kill the bad bacteria. If we kill the bad bacteria, and then we replace the good bacteria, and we rotate the probiotics.
So can we say, we have some people wondering, and maybe not everyone is writing, but perhaps they see themselves related to the testimonies that you shared, or we have someone here who had crazy high levels of acid, insane levels of acid and ulcers, and maybe someone is dealing with a specific disease. Where do they start? You mentioned starting with killing the bad bacteria, but what can we do to make that, to go through that process of?
Yeah, it's a process that you need professional help. That we need to diagnose the severity of the dysbiosis. For example, somebody that has peptic ulcer disease in the stomach, that is because of the H. pylori bacteria, right? So most of those patients receive antibiotic to kill the bacteria. But most of us has that bacteria, okay? The reason, because that person developed this ulcer and it was susceptible to this bacteria, is because this person already have a dysbiosis. Remember that our intestinal flora defend us from the bad guys. So they keep the bad guys under control. But if you have a dysbiosis, the bad guys, they are gonna make a party in your body, right? So we need to, you have an ulcer disease. It's okay for this patient to take the antibiotics to kill the H. pylori, but we need to repair the gut dysbiosis, because if we don't do that, this person is going to develop again. And that happens all the time. I receive all the patients post-antibiotics, post-treatment for H. pylori or ulcer disease. And they are, why? I was okay for a while, but now I am getting worse. And this is the reason, because you already have a dysbiosis, but you didn't treat it. You were only to target that bacteria. Okay, now that you target the bacteria, now we need to to make the environment so this bacteria doesn't grow again and take control of your stomach.
Does that have anything to do with there's trendy detox diets like grapefruit and Epsom salt, or even eating diets to lose weight? Or how does this affect our gut health? Diets such as keto, paleo, or these detox diets that we also encounter?
Yeah. Most of the time we do these diets because of the first presentation, right? We want to look good outside, but we don't think about the science behind everything. We need to think about that because you have short goals like, oh yeah,
quick results.
Yeah, quick results, so you are happy. But then while you were eating those foods that are high in animal fat, animal protein, then remember that we said during the presentation, you are feeding the bad bacteria. So then later, yeah, you are going to lose weight really fast, but then it comes the effect, rebound effect, right? This person, now added more pounds than before and feel worse than before. And yeah, you feel well for a little while because you have so much dysbiosis that I don't know if you get, but these patients that I receive, most of them eat well. They eat good food, but they are really sick. Why? Because the bad bacteria, they want to survive. Okay, so they are gonna get used to eat the good food also, so they can survive. But because they are not able to produce anti-inflammatory substances, they are gonna eat the good food, but they are gonna do inflammation anyway. So these trending diets is because they are getting rid of the fiber that most of them feel like bloated with fiber, but it's because of the bad bacteria. And then, they feel well for a while, but then it's gonna get worse later, right? And so we need to be very careful. Go with the science behind everything, not because somebody, you lose weight, in 10 days you lose 20 pounds. That is no logic. Right. Okay, that is not logic. So we need to always find the science to look good outside, but to be healthy. That is the main thing, to be healthy.
Okay. Well, Dr. Vasquez, thank you so much for just being straight up with your answers and going again to the root of the problem. We've talked about stress and obesity and hormones and the gut health. What can you tell us about a little snippet for tomorrow if someone's watching and they feel like, I don't know if tomorrow I'll join?
Yeah, tomorrow is we are gonna
wrap it up
everything. We are gonna talk about mental health.
Okay.
Wow.
All right. So mental health, such a crucial topic right now. Thank you, Dr. Vasquez, for being with us and for answering your questions. And everyone in the audience, we hope you join us tomorrow at the same time.